Well, an episode of Green and Shy. I'm here with my sidekick, Edamir and Jacquie Cohen Roth. Jacquie, thank you for joining us tonight. We're so happy to have you. And Jacquie is the founder of CannabizMD. She founded it in 2017, and also TPAD CO, founded in 2019. And she's a proponent of social change to empower and educate people about the cannabis industry and make it a better place for everyone to be involved in. Jacquie, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. You know, and here in Maryland, it's been cold enough to put the fire on for this fireside chat, but yes, the sun finally came out this evening.
Well, it's been chilly here in Chicago, and we've had more rain than you can possibly imagine. Everything's at flood stage around here and wet.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us, Jacquie. As you know, everybody that's joining us, Green and Shy is designed to bring opportunity to Chicagoland and everyone that's a cannabis enthusiast. But we also want to bring great leaders like Jacquie. You know, when we put Green and Shy together, we really wanted it to be an opportunity platform, opportunity so that you can learn about the education or anything about cannabis, CBD, everything that has to do with it, get a job in it, get training, start a business, and get all the support that you need or get connections. If you're an investor, find opportunities and, you know, have some good thought leadership. So if you are, you know, someone that's in the cannabis or CBD industry, looking for help in marketing, looking for help in training or taking a class or job opportunities, or you need a banking relationship or any of that, contact us. Altan, A-L-T-A-N @greenandshy.com. One of us will definitely love to help you guys out. That's what this is all about. And that's why we have great people like Dan and Jacquie with us. And with that, let's get to the excitement. I'll let Dan take over with the interview.
Well, Jacquie, we got connected on LinkedIn, so that's how we got started. I wrote a little note to you, and you responded, and one thing led to another, and we've had a few good conversations, you with Tony, and now we're together tonight, so I'm really thankful that you decided to join us for this meeting. Could you tell us a little bit how you got into the cannabis side of the market, and just about your career in general, because you've got a really good medical background with organizations you've been involved with and actually founded. You're quite the entrepreneur, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, yeah, I say I'm going to go kicking and screaming out of a home-based office. But yeah, I've been an entrepreneur since early 2000s, and background, I have a more personal, holistic approach to healthcare, whether making decisions for as I was raising my family, and as well as myself. So my origination in the clinical space was back as actually a child. My father was a physician, my sister's a physician. I literally grew up in the hospital with my dad and was asked, are you going to be a nurse and help your daddy when you grow up? And it was, no, I'm going to be a doctor and be his boss. And that was the path until I hit organic chemistry, which happens to many of us with those great intentions. So I veered away from that clinical space where I'd been working for my dad in the microbiology lab and doing all sorts of things, and ended up with an undergraduate degree in policy studies and economics and international economics as well, but found myself back in that clinical space, which is truly my passion, when I got into publishing. So one thing led to another. I launched my first company. It was Mojo Media. And Mojo, what we did is the first launch was a magazine that was regional, as we refer to it as the DMV area, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And our audience, our readership was physicians and healthcare stakeholders. And then we started to do projects with all of the hospitals in the DMV region and the systems. I can hear my dog below me squeaking his toy. I don't know if that's picking up. But in any event, so I was in that space and developing physician marketing initiatives and physician engagement initiatives. And in my magazine was introducing this concept of alternative treatments and clinical approaches. And of course, one being medical cannabis. So of course, this was not legal in Maryland at the time. It was first introduced in Maryland in actually 2003. Not many people are aware of that. So anyway, fast forward with the impact of the Affordable Care Act, as hospitals became siloed in the large practices that I had been working with, I recognized that there was a need for change in my business and was figuring out what to do next. And at the same time, again, being very mindful of watching medical programs become legal, of course, starting in California and moving their way west. And so that's when I decided to do a pivot and boldly leapt into full-on medical cannabis. So that was 2017 with the launch of CannabizMD.
Tell us about TPAD also before we
Yeah, sure. So TPAD, definitely a passion project. TPAD is its own separate entity, and it is a social enterprise, meaning it is a for-profit business, but committed to social change. The name TPAD has some really great history to it. TPADs were actually speakeasies in the 20s and 30s, where marijuana was introduced to the African-American community. And at the same time, American jazz was being born in these spaces. So, of course, marijuana had been introduced to the African-American culture in the slave district in New Orleans. And this, that's where jazz was born and then migrated north. So again, these spaces in the 20s and 30s, Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Ella Fitzgerald were hanging out, making this incredible music. Ganja and all these great words were born referring to cannabis, or ganja being as a Jamaican, but some other words. So in any event, I borrowed that name and actually modeled these TPAD events with a nod to the history. So TPAD is committed to social change and justice in the cannabis industry. So its mission is to break down barriers to entry into the cannabis industry and engage participation via education. So our proceeds of these networking events that are on pause right now due to COVID, but proceeds of these events fund the TPAD Scholarship for Minority Entrepreneurship. So the events are really fun. We start off with a jazz trio or 5-piece while folks check in, get a cocktail, network, grab some hors d'oeuvres. And then we have a keynote speaker who's either a legislator in empowering social justice in the respective state program, to a minority owner, entrepreneur, and they speak to their experiences and what social justice looks like. It's actually, we've had some really provocative conversations, and then there's Q&A, and folks then go back to networking.
Nice.
Yeah,
Sounds
thanks.
a lot like what we do at Green and Shy, and
Sounds like it.
Us like what you do. We're here on video because we can't meet.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got something coming up next week that kicks off where exactly it's a pivot to this virtual world of ours now.
I was just going to say, who gave you our blueprint? It sounds like.
I don't know.
I mean, minus the jazz, Chicago's a little bit different, but I think we could get away with the nice jazz, especially with
That would be nice. What a nice touch.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the invitation.
Hey, you're always invited, always invited.
We'd love to have you come speak in Chicago. If you're ever going to be here, give us a few months notice or month and we'll get you on.
Yeah, well, Chicago's in my blood and my parents met there.
Did they?
Yeah.
What part?
I don't, my mom was a patient in Michael Reese Hospital. My father was doing his residency, and bada bing, bada boom, here I am.
That's awesome. Great story. Started right here in the
with
city
all
of the shoulders.
With all the things that are going on right now with COVID, and I'm sure it's a little bit different because Chicago is a new market. We have just the doors are wide open for applications, and a lot of people, especially the social equity applicants that are coming up, they're very concerned because of all the pushbacks on the dates and when the approvals. What kind of things are going on over on your side? I mean, is it similar? I'm sure it's much more organized. You guys are a little ahead of us, or maybe it isn't. I mean, it's completely different from what I hear.
Yeah, well, interesting that you say that. So Maryland, when the market opened up, actually went live January 2018. And it was right away, there were lawsuits in that the original awards for the 15 grow and 15 processors went to white men. And so as part of that whole, the lawsuits, and that raised the awareness, got the governor's attention, of course, with the help of Maryland's Black Caucus in this legislative body. And so in any event, one thing led to another, where we actually had a second round of licenses. A big surprise that African-American women, Native American women, minorities, through a demand study ordered by the governor, were found to be the most disenfranchised. Yeah, again, surprise. So that led to what's referred to as HB2 in Maryland, and that opened up a second round of licenses. And so actually it was almost exactly a year ago, or it might be this week, that actually I co-founded a team where we applied. It was an all-female team for grow, process. There were, I believe there were just over 100 of us. And you know, this industry is, as you know, referred to as dog years. So whatever happened a year ago was, 8 years ago. So yeah, those applications, so that was a year ago. There were complications with IT when they were uploaded. A couple other lawsuits were filed. So there is right now a review of the applications of what happened with those awards, because there were some big names that were awarded the licenses, or we heard through the scuttlebutt. There wasn't the official announcement, but again, it's on hold. So it's actually, I think, very unfortunate in Maryland, because these existing license holders, they are moving forward. We're looking at adult use probably coming to market in Maryland in the next couple of years, and the minority owners are going to continue to be lagging behind.
This is kind of just piggybacking off of that, because I mean, you could take this question either way, because obviously there's a big benefit, especially for the people that are new to the industry, to get the consultants, get the help to get the application the right way, because there's so many people wasting their application money doing it wrong or not doing it right, thinking that it's easy. It's not easy. You have to have everything in a row, check twice, start over, do it again, and then submit it, right? So how much do you think is actually kind of that quasi corruption, and how much is it because they have the resources, they can pay people to make sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted? And what happens if someone does win one of those suits? Does that mean it takes a license away from someone, or are they awarding a new one?
They're awarding a new one. So they were 4 grows that were to be awarded, but who came in with this new round, again, these awards have not been made or announced, but names like John Boehner, 4th generation Bush family. So
you're going to introduce me to all these people, right?
Pardon me?
You're going to introduce me to all these people?
Yeah. So these folks, is that where the promise had been made that these are going to be Marylanders that are going to win these awards. The legislator who was behind this, unfortunately, who has been indicted, said, that we're not going to have out-of-state license plates in the parking lots as owners. And I don't believe John Boehner is a Maryland resident.
So that's a good qualification.
Yeah.
Although he does work for a Maryland company in the investor side of the market. He works for a Baltimore-based company. Did you know that?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
But I think he's from Pennsylvania.
Ohio.
Ohio?
Yeah.
Did he move to Pennsylvania? I'm not sure of that.
No.
Most likely not. So Jackie, another part of your website I was looking at, I was really impressed. You've got testimonials from people that you've helped medically and worked with. Could you talk a little bit about how you've worked with these folks? And it's a lot of different ailments where they benefited from use of medical cannabis.
Oh, thank you. No, this is, I have not treated these folks. So what you're referring to are patient stories. So
yes, I love your patient stories.
Yeah, thank you. So that's on CannabizMD.com. And so when CannabizMD, when I launched, the original mission was to build an ecosystem supporting Maryland's nascent medical cannabis industry. And the mission at that time the ecosystem was inclusive of the patient, the owner operators, the providers, the policymakers, the stakeholders. You know, it was pretty massive. And as you know, entrepreneur, and you learn things, and you're constantly churning and changing. So as I have scaled back on the patient engagement, however, I do have a patient education event starting next week. But in any event, I thought it was very critical and imperative that patient stories are shared with the key stakeholders, again, being owner operators and the ancillary service providers, policy folks, et cetera. So, you know, they know, obviously, the patients are coming in and buying their products, but they may not know, you know, how they're using it or what products they're using. Or, you know, my original intent was, oh, I'm only going to have certified patients. And then as I was hearing the patients and being introduced to patients, I, you know, heard these incredible stories where, you know, one guy, black market, had gotten himself off of heroin, got himself so steady, getting away from heroin, that he actually was able to move from Tennessee to work in the industry in Colorado. So that's a really powerful, powerful patient story. So yeah, thank you for bringing those to everybody's attention.
What is your greatest passion right now for this industry, Jacquie, that you see where you're passionate about changing something to make a difference?
Yeah, you know, we had chatted a bit about being an entrepreneur, as I refer to it, as the, you know, the shiny object syndrome, or the muses are talking to you, where I veered off of my focus, again, that clinical focus on, you know, again, I have this history of policy, economics, the clinical background that's in my blood. I guess, you know, probably overarching is a Hebrew phrase that leads me both personally and professionally, which is a Tikkun Olam, which ironically enough is a Israeli cannabis company. But in Hebrew, two words, Tikkun, then Olam, it literally means repair of the world. So whether I am doing that via education of patients, we are putting together CannabizMD, a very large healthcare provider focused education forum in October, to raising awareness of social justice. So, you know, repair of the world can, to me, looks different in a variety of ways. But I would say, you know, probably boils all the way down to quality patient care, delivering quality patient care. And, you know, in this industry, there are so many facets to that, right? I mean, how you get that cannabis to that patient, whether it's you know, an infant who's seizuring hundreds of times a day, to a 50-something-year-old who is recently diagnosed and trying to manage the side effects of chemotherapy.
Well, it's also about the education. I think you touched it's really important to educate the patient, because some people, they might want to try cannabis, and I know examples of this. You know, and I give them my advice, my 2 cents. I'm not a doctor. I told them where they can look at it, but you look at the patient's medicine, and the doctor says they're giving them cannabis, but it's maybe 10 milligrams, and that's not going to do anything if they really were someone that was focused in that, you know, endocannabinoid type of medicine, because they'll know that if it's a cancer patient, they need much more than just 10 milligrams. That's not going to do something for a first timer, really, you know? So it's kind of those type of things. And it's kind of might have that placebo effect, but people don't know if they're not educated. They don't know what they should be doing, or how much CBD, or the combination of the ratios, and what terpenes might help them out, or different effects of CBG and stuff. And those are all very important, especially when your life's on the line.
Right. And that's where, you know, I'm shifting my focus back to more so in my professional background is provider education. So I had been in that traditional space, working with the hospitals and systems in my region. So that is the intent of this provider education forum that Cannabis is hosting in October. Is, you know, the majority of physicians have not had the opportunity to be taught about the endocannabinoid system. My sister, a physician, when I told her I was pivoting to cannabis, wherever it was 3 years ago. And, I was met with a great deal of old-fashioned stigma. And until I got the call or a text message, it was about 2 years, about a year after I launched it. What's your URL? That's all she said. That's all the message said. And that she had been treating a trauma patient. She's an orthopedic surgeon, and she had been talking to an EMT that shared with her the efficacy of treating patients who are seizuring. Mm-hmm. And, education is that, again, raising this awareness, removing the stigma. Also, really things that you mentioned about physicians, and when a patient is a medical cannabis patient, it is imperative that they share with their their physicians that they are a patient, because there is a drug-drug interaction that, that it's absolutely manageable, but physicians need to know and change that dosing. Are you going to be taking your pharmaceutical product at night, your traditional pharmaceutical product? Well, then let's pull back on when you're dosing your cannabis, things like that.
They can communicate too.
Yeah.
That's important.
I'm really interested in your views on clinical applications, clinical research organizations. They've been stifled in this country because—
Right, the CROs, right.
Yes, the classification. I used to staff those organizations with doctors and PhDs that did medical research, a lot for cancer and other types of ailments. But I really believe I know a lot of doctors, and I attend ASCO, and when you talk to doctors about cannabis, a lot of them just shut you off. They're not interested in learning about it. They're very, very, closed-minded. Then I find other doctors that want to know everything. And I'm just wondering, your impression coming from a medical family, you talked a little about your sister, but you probably have a lot of encounters and interactions with doctors. And I was just wondering what your thoughts are on how do we get doctors more knowledgeable about the endocannabinoid system in the human being, and companies like StrainPrint and StrainGenie, what they're doing with genetic, they're looking genetically at the plant as well, and sequencing the DNA of the plant and looking at our endocannabinoid system, trying to match them. And I think there's something there, along with the different terpenes and the cannabinoids. And love to hear your thoughts on that in depth.
Yeah, well, that is the overarching biggest issue. I mean, let alone the banking issue, but figuring out when and how and what the end of federal prohibition looks like, whether it is stepping down to Schedule 2, whether it's becoming its own classification, so that these clinical trials, we need the FDA gold star, double-blind placebo, traditional studies permitted and funded, so that there is the buy-in from the traditional healthcare providers. So what's exciting, actually, you're seeing a shift. The majority of states now have a medical cannabis program. The majority of Americans would like access to medical cannabis. Folks continue to talk to and are not afraid to talk to their physicians. And I think, all these, so to speak, pressures are coming upon the physicians. But, my experience in communicating and who I'm seeing engaging, I'm also in the first graduate program in medical cannabis. It's with the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. So in my cohort, we have physicians. So we have, it's a pretty wide range of zero experience in the industry to entrepreneurs like myself, to we actually have one of the formulator processors for Wana Brands based in Colorado. He's in the program. So, we're going to be the first ones out there. We finish up a year from now. And making, So
the first class, how big is your class?
It started off at 150. So I'm curious as to what it is right now. As it shrunk or not. So it's.
I would think your class will be in high demand.
I hope that's the idea. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that is actually, for me personally is definitely a shift in my thinking where, again, I started the conversation that my approach personally to healthcare has been more holistic. my parents, would be called anti-vaxxers, even though my father was a physician. They had great concerns about the polio vaccine. So I'm going to be in trouble if there's ever a polio endemic again, or epidemic.
But didn't the polio one come with a cool scar?
Yeah, I don't have that. I know. I was like, I was angelic. Oh.
I got a sugar cube.
What's that?
When I was a kid with polio vaccines, they gave it in a sugar cube.
Yeah, well, so I never got that, but in any event, so, with now far better understanding the pharmaceutical industry on, the inside, so to speak, as I'm in the School of Pharmacy. And I think that actually the cannabis industry, that goes to a big conversation on the future of cannabis, of the medical cannabis industry.
I don't think they do sugar cubes anymore because that backfired in the 70s and then they stopped it.
When kids were pounding down polio sugar cubes.
Yeah.
I know as I'm fine, and it was a long time ago, and I don't plan. I'm really against vaccines these days. I'm really unsure.
It's scary. I mean, when I have 3 daughters, and when that HPV vaccine, I grew up. I was younger than the thalidomide. Those babies. I mean, all these things. There are no longitudinal studies. It's very scary. What's going on with COVID and these fast-tracked clinical trials that one is now getting ready for stage 2, and I don't know. It's
I'm going to pass.
Pardon me?
I'm going to pass on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, the thing that scares me about that, and some people can say that, there's not testing with the cannabis market, but I know it's natural. With this, since it's a pandemic, these pharmaceutical companies, they're coming up with solutions with no liability. So if you grow a 3rd arm 2 years later, nobody cares. You just can cover your mouth when you cough with that arm, It's just, it's ridiculous. So I don't think that, anything but the media is to blame for a lot of this hoopla, because, these type of things have happened. When Woodstock, was going on, there was actually a pandemic worse than this, but they treated it completely different, and people died, and I think we did a better job this time, but media didn't do anything. And I wish the media can get a little bit involvement on the cannabis side, and not be kind of banned and have all the regulation, because although the smoking and eating I can understand, the social equity and all the good and stuff that you can talk about on that side is also in that bucket, because no one wants to take the risk, unfortunately. So.
Jackie, I have another question for you. I was looking at your website on CannabizMD, and I saw that you were doing some cooking with cannabis.
Yes, yeah.
I do a little experimenting there myself. Some successful, some not so. So
I actually,
a little about your experience.
Yeah, well, my experience goes back to college, of course, with the brownies. Shortly after CannabizMD launched, we hosted Cooking with Cannabis 101, October 2018. And then I came up with a really fun idea, Super Bowl Eats, where the Ravens are in the running. And so that was January 2019. Didn't work out for the Ravens, but it was
took the edge off, though, if you're a Raiders fan, right?
But we did, some infused cooking. So collaborated with Chef Jazz, and we did anywhere from the decarboxylation process, cooking with flour, to cooking with concentrate. So Jazz and I are collaborating again, and I don't know if you remember, Science Bob. I think he's still around. I did a quick Google.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So Jazz and I are actually next week, Thursday, May 29th, kicking off a 4-week module, or 4-module cover over 4 weeks on cooking with cannabis. And so I'm in my mind's eye, we'll see how this plays out. I'm doing this virtually, where when we were together, we've been in a institutional cooking kitchen. But so I'll be weighing in as Science Jackie, and she will be the cannabis chef. So as we're talking about the edibles, and I'll talk about things like how your liver is processing it and converting from THCA or to THC, and THC, et cetera, et cetera. So
that'll be fun while it's coming on and you're enjoying your meal.
Yeah.
there's a lady in Chicago that wrote Toe Kitchen. Her name is Jolene Rivera. Do you know Jolene by any chance?
No, I don't.
She
Yeah.
did a dinner for Jim Belushi recently, and I really wanted to get to talk to her since she's done that, but I haven't had an opportunity. But that had to be a fun dinner, I'm sure. But I've been seeking out people that are doing cannabis dinners, so I'd like to meet this lady because I'd love to have a panel on that. Alton and I have talked about this for a while, and if we had 4 people that are doing different types of cooking for, healthy cannabis, like I do Whole30, I'd love to see a Whole30 cannabis diet.
Dan, I said I wanted to be a judge. That's correct. That I wanted to be.
That is correct. I apologize, Alton. But that's an area that can be a lot of fun, and I think it's enjoyable as well. And I think it's going to be a bigger market, I believe. I'm guessing, but I have to think some of these restaurant owners are going to want to do off-site cannabis dinners for some of their best.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly, part of this pivot. And I mean, to be aware of it, what are we going to do, the workarounds within the industry, also awareness of folks are concerned about inhaling cannabis with COVID and keeping your lungs healthy. However, there is demonstrated efficacy on the reduction in the inflammation in the lungs, that cannabis actually is effective treating asthma. But in any event, in the vaping crisis, so folks are definitely more aware of inhaling, whether you're smoking a joint or dabbing, whatever it is. But looking again at dosing via edibles, and so where I'll be able to during this our modules is speak to more of the commercial side of gummies, or commercial side of edibles, and of course that is growing. What's available, but of course not in every state. And then for this is directed at the novice cannabis at-home chef. So what can they do with flower? What can they do with concentrates? And again, being mindful of processors as they have their cannabis oil concentrates, and educating folks, well, we don't have to put it in the vape pen. You can take it home and you can cook with it.
I got a question on that, because it's something that's, as I mentioned before, with banking and the CBD and processing, you have to have lab testing and regulation and consistency. What are you recommending to your people that you're talking to? Are you recommending them to find a processor to do it for them so that they know the exact kilograms, or are you
absolutely 100? Is do not get anything that you're cooking with off the street. I mean, whatever you have has been lab tested. Is that what you're referring to?
No. Actually, the opposite. Are you teaching them to do this themselves as a business, or are you implying that they should always kind of outsource that process? I mean, 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, right, Dan, we had a great processor here that has multiple clients that even white labels for them, helps them with packaging. Those are the type of companies the small business owners need, because who can afford their own process and lab testing on the quantities that you can make to make money, So it's more so, what do you think? Because there's also the importance of knowing the right milligram that's in their product, because if they're taking just a 20 milligram difference, they take too much. Later on, that 11 hydroxy THC kicks in, and they're taking naps for a few hours.
Right. I mean, and that is part of our program, is to educate that, is know your numbers and know your dosing. And that is absolutely, as you're essentially underscoring, is that with home cooking and your edibles, is that if you buy a gummy and you know that it's 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams, or we've got some in the state that are 25 milligrams, you know what that dosing is. Of course, a 25 milligram being intended for a pretty sick individual that needs that high dosing, of course, versus somebody who's at home making infused popcorn. But you also have to consider is that, as cooking, it's not intentionally, or my intention is not recreational use, is that there are, again, folks that, edibles is a drug delivery form. So,
well, I mean, some of these patients, they have to take 1,000 milligrams to make a difference. And how do you take that? I mean, smoking 1,000 milligrams is a lot.
Yeah.
Eating it is a lot. I mean, you're going to get sick of gummies. the RSO is the best way because it's so simple, different
Right.
delivery methods, but you gotta change it up. So I completely understand. It's just,
Right.
I know that, you're leading the way, and it's awesome, but there's a lot of people that want to follow. Like, for instance, we have a great team that comes to our event sponsor called Posted and Toasted. They have their own CBD kind of products that they give away at our events. And then they can also do private events, because I don't know if it's the same as in Maryland, but if you're catering a private party at a private residence, it's kind of the loophole, right? But they do a really good job with that. But I don't know if they're doing similar things out there, because it's important. I know they have a specific source with lab testing and all that they
Right.
use, but it might not be that easy for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it is a similar model, is that if you're on private property, if you're in a private home, it's up to that homeowner or business owner whether there is dosing on property.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. There was actually one of the TPAD events that I hosted, is that the restaurant owner said, I'd love to partner with you on an event. And if it's okay with them, that can be done, but that one of the owner operators, not cool for them to participate in that, be around that. So it's, that may be viewed more in the adult use lane and recreational lane, which I'm, again, medical.
No, that's good.
Also, Jackie, changing the subject, I was noticing also that you're an advisory board member to Can Expo Greece.
Yeah.
Are they still going to have it with?
No.
No.
I mean, it's going to be a virtual event. Actually, I'm on a call tomorrow morning. So that is scheduled for October 20th. And I'm very exciting what's going on in the EU. So I was introduced to some folks. I had the opportunity to be part of a conference, an international conference in Malta in November. And as these programs emerge in the EU and internationally, what's going on. So yeah, that one has gone virtual.
Can you tell me more about Malta? I mean, I actually have a coworker. I used to run an office here for a company based in Dubai, and the person that pretty much I was working with now lives in Malta, and I'm hearing all these things. I also do blockchain, fintech, and all that stuff, and Malta's there. I hear Malta.
Oh, yeah.
And we're talking about a cannabis exchange that you were working with some of our partners, Malta. And I've seen pictures of it, and it's kind of, it's kind of a Game of Thrones in the modern world kind of looking thing. And
well, it was filmed there.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah.
I just
No, Malta is incredible. And it was a really incredible experience to be there. It is the oldest architecture, the archaeology, I guess that would apply as well. But these structures that are there, and you have the juxtaposition of the most ancient looking stone building right next to like the ugliest 1970s piece of architecture, but it's really incredible. And so where the Prime Minister got into some trouble, deservedly so, but the country itself, it got attention on 60 Minutes, where that is an entry point for the Chinese and to buy, and the Russians to buy visas, and then that gives them access.
They have one of those citizenship for investment programs. Not like the EB5, but it's a city like you can buy land there, you hold it, you invest in the product, you get a citizenship, and it helps. There's a couple programs. The company I had one in St. Kitts and Nevis, but that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, well, I say, is that some say that Malta is corrupt. I say it's very entrepreneurial, where, they have welcomed partnerships with Canadian cannabis companies, Israeli cannabis companies to come in. They don't have the land there to grow, but they can bring in the and process there and distribute, is that is Malta right there is the harbor where you are going right up to the EU, if to Europe, if you're heading north, or you also are that point, or Malta is that point from North Africa. And that's why it has been invaded by every civilization known to mankind. Being there, I mean, it was just incredible is that what this country and how it has built itself to protect its harbors. It's really incredible. And actually, it's got a huge pharmaceutical industry there. Yeah. So I did not know that till I was there. So it's a really interesting country.
Oh, it's very interesting. It's old, but very forward thinking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's very liberal. It's kind of like the Panama City over there.
Can't say that. I've never been to Panama, but Malta was pretty cool.
So another question I had, Jackie, since you're interested in the healthcare side and you were in the EU and you've been doing some work there, what are your views on what they're doing in medical research for cannabis, for terpenes and cannabinoids for disease and ailments differently than we're doing in other parts of the world? Yeah. Because I think there's a huge divide there.
Absolutely.
They're way ahead.
Right.
Could you elaborate and talk a little about that?
Just that there is the opportunity, I mean, that it is not as well. Who is leading the countries, or who internationally are leading studies? Of course, is Israel. Yeah, exactly. And so there are these opportunities, and actually the EU, and this was what my panel I developed it to, and the guests spoke to, our lessons learned that as these markets emerge in the EU, that what they can learn from the earlier markets, of course, being in the United States or the Canadian markets. And so how to go in and set up programs that are already, you are engaged with universities, you have clinical trials going on immediately. Like, who had done a great start, I think, to in the States, setting up a program is Pennsylvania, where they had immediately engagement with, I forgot whether it was 7 hospitals, and getting sharing the patient data. So there are lessons to be learned, and as the countries have their own federal prohibition against cannabis and medical cannabis, it's every country, like in the United States, has a different approach.
Yeah, they do. I mean, over here, it's so crazy. Everything has to be grown at the University of Mississippi, and they have different types of growing that they do. Then it's sent to the NIH, and it's crazy that the DEA here has so much to do with it, when really maybe it should be put in the hands of medical science and not a drug enforcement agency. Oh,
yeah. I mean, and this goes to where as I see the future of medical cannabis, is that you have generations of growers and the knowledge assets, as I refer to it, whether it be, from these historical legendary, not legend, well, they are legendary if they're coming from certain parts, but the knowledge assets that they have, and they can go in and collaborate with, say, a pharmaceutical company that, somebody other than GW, that they have and develop plant-based medicines. And but at the same time, there's the integration with the pharmaceutical industry, where they can apply their knowledge assets. What is missing in the cannabis industry, for example, is a standardized good manufacturing practices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the other issue that I think GW has faced also with Epidiolex is getting the plants to be the same and consistent every grow period.
Right. And so why not tap into these folks that know what they're doing, and have, proof.
I mean, I know guys in their 60s that have grown pot for the last 45 years.
Well, I have actually a pretty cool story that if you go to TPAD's website, teapad.co, yes. And you'll see, so when in 1920, women got the right to vote. And this was also the time where TPADs were going on. So you will see on the website, there's looks like a flapper where, you see that? That's my that's my grandmother.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was at my aunt's 90th birthday party this past summer. And My grandmother grew up mainline Philadelphia. That means anything to anybody. But the word is that she actually grew marijuana because she loved the way it looked in her floral arrangements. So I am a multi-generational white woman grower. I'm not sure how many people are, I'm not growing, but in the industry, so to speak, is how many white women can say that.
And what was your grandmother's name?
I called her Brownie, but actually that's rather ironic. I don't think she was making brownies at that point, but no, Louise.
Louise. No, I've never met or knew about a flapper. So Louise is my first flapper.
Yeah, yeah. I got a lot of stories about her. She was a character.
That sounds like a good one. So I think we have a few questions, don't we, Alton?
Yeah. One of the questions we had from Vincent, he actually is a very active member with the Green and Shy crowd here. He's asking, how is the THC butter circulating in the market?
It's not.
Boom.
Pretty simple. Boom.
Next question.
Yeah.
Why not though? What's the issue with it?
Well, definitely not in Maryland. I mean,
That's one of those black market type of things though. They do sell that by the ounces. Well,
yeah, I mean, yeah. So I'm going to, be in my medical lane, and that's a very complex product. I mean, how's it going to stay on the shelf? How is it not going to separate between, you've got that emulsification between the cannabinoids and the fats of the butter. You do have CBD infused oils.
Yeah, but nothing like something you can just cut into that's already in a nice thing that says butter
like
on the side.
Pillsbury, that's what you need. This is Pillsbury pre-roll cookies.
Right.
There's 5 grams.
I know Vincent, I know you applied for an application. He's the one that asked the question, but if you get that for your dispensary, maybe that's the product you guys make is the butter, because I will be a customer. I got a question though, while we're waiting on some others. So over here in Illinois, there's a lot of social equity programs. One of my favorite companies, I know Dan likes it as well, Cresco, Sunnyside, that whole thing. They actually have a program called Seed. It's the social equity.
Yeah, they launched after TPAT.
Oh,
they launched after TPAT.
Perfect.
Yeah, so they're focused. Yeah.
So it's a similar program, right? Is that, I'm just trying to compare, because I was just going to ask you, do you guys have similar programs in Maryland? And it sounds like you cover that whole map.
Well, so Maryland actually was the first state to legislate social equity.
Oh, nice.
To its program. However, it truly hasn't been executed because that was with the second round of licenses that have not been awarded. But there definitely is, there are companies that actually, CannabizMD and TPAT are a partner with, a shout out to my friend Kevin Ford of Uplift, Maryland. And so they were awarded a contract to work with minorities on developing their applications, helping raise money, what it means to raise money. I believe it's Chicago or Illinois actually went further, and where with their social equity programs, they actually set aside money to help these companies, seed money, right? So that's the number one.
There's a lot of red tape with that. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if it's like that. I don't know Maryland too much. I went to DC. That was probably about the closest I got to it when I was a kid with my dad. But here, they have different aldermen for different neighborhoods. Chicago is very big. It's kind of like a mini New York. And some aldermen here are saying, I don't care if you have your application approved, you won't have a dispensary in my district if you don't have a minority partner.
Well, and then that goes to, and what's being looked at right now in Maryland, you can, buy a face, or faces have been bought. Right. So
same here, Jackie.
Right
I think that's happened.
Right. Yeah, that's going to happen. And unfortunately everywhere. And so that's what's going on now, is that there are going to be, I don't know if they've taken place, but the executive director of Maryland's Medical Cannabis Commission, the MMCC, Will Tilburg, was speaking a couple weeks ago on an update where interviews with these license applicants. again, that they, everything should be above board, as we refer to, your I's are double dotted and your T's are double crossed.
So I have another question, since no one else is asking questions. This has always been mind-boggling to me, and since this is your department, I think it's only appropriate to ask you, with all the opportunity available specifically for social equity applicants, all these different programs, usually the case is they're missing in funding, they're missing something on that level because they have everything else. And let's face it, no one wants to just cough up $1 million. A lot of time you have to have $1 million line of credit, reserve, what have you. No one wants to cough that up for some of the demographics in some of these regions, although it basically is a money printer for at least 2 or 3 years, 4 years until competition keeps up. So
not so much. I mean, it depends. No,
well, my question is, why aren't there funds and groups specifically looking for groups like yourself that have a plethora of applicants with all the social equity and looking for the best ones to invest in, like a private equity would startup, but specifically focus on social equity? Because it seems like there's going to be allotted amounts of applications and licenses for them, but no one's really, it's that funding capability, usually that's the one that draws them out.
Yeah, so there are some groups that are African American focused. There are groups that focus on funding women. But I know my personal experience, it was incredibly challenging to find folks to partner with that would support our funding. And then that went into also the ridiculous and sexist things that were said to us as female founders. Go down that lane. Yeah.
I got them.
Yeah, we absolutely need to see more women in cannabis. I think Colorado's got some outstanding women in the market in the grow side. So does Oregon and Washington. I think we need to see it all over the country.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are. I think it is. I mean, also the power of women as consumers. That I know what I would like to do with my graduate degree as I learn more about the processing side and the formulation is to focus on a specific demographic of women, boomers. This is the fastest growing demographic of cannabis users, and women, that subset. And we, a boomer, now everybody makes fun of us, but no, we have the power in numbers, and as we age, managing chronic disease, disorders, chronic pain. So anyway, going to the power of women in the industry. It's exciting to see what has happened, but there's the challenge. I know that for me, as a non-plant touching ancillary business, as I support the industry, I have gone after some funding that I was actually within the county where I live. They were very excited when I was launching CannabizMD to support the industry as it was coming to fruition in the state. And I said, I'm going to get shut out from the Small Business Administration. I already knew that. I'm a federally illegal. So that's been extremely challenging. As opening up bank accounts. I mean, just getting down to the simple things. Yeah. And again, I'm not plant touching.
I can help you with that bank account. But one of the questions we have actually is kind of in that area. They wanted to know, one, I don't know the clarification, what program you're in right now. I don't know if that's the school or TPADS. Yes. But the other thing too is just some of those funding sources. Obviously everyone knows that it's very difficult, but it'd be great to hear some of those sources so that maybe people can look at it, look at the requirements, see that, what they need to do, because that's what I usually do. I help people raise capital as well. And I'll be honest with them. It's not beneficial to tell them they can get this or that, but it's beneficial to tell them what they need to get that.
Yeah. I mean, we can trade some information when we're offline, because they're not coming to mind. Right.
No worries. And we'll share that with the recording on this. Okay.
Yeah. But to answer the question about the program that I'm in, it's the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And it's a Master's of Science in Medical Cannabis Science and Therapeutics.
I think that's great.
It's really cool. I mean, doing it right, checks off personally boxes for me, but I mean, both as what I would like to do in the industry, and I mean, to be, to be a leader in the industry or to be successful at anything, you need to know, I think, absolutely most that you can know about something. So where I was lacking, I mean, with my undergraduate degree, policy and economics, I'm a policy wonk and geek, is I have a pretty good understanding of how to read regs and interpret, but I was missing the science part. So that's very exciting, the things that I'm learning. And again, it's definitely made me recognize to be more forward thinking on the opportunities, entertaining the pharmaceutical industry, and of course, tech as well.
How did you find that? Did that group reach out to you? We had there's not that many good programs, solid program. I know, Dan, you had a panelist, our second panel that we had, not the last one that I hosted, but the one before that we had a provost from a university here in Illinois that had cannabis courses. And you're actually the second one that I heard of, obviously from a big university. How do people find this? Because there's a big difference between taking courses that can educate you and courses that actually get you credit towards something.
Yeah, so I had heard it was coming. It's actually a pretty interesting story. So Dean Natalie Eddington is the dean of the School of Pharmacy. And if you, there are photographs, she spoke at a TPAT event. And so I heard the program was coming. When she originally, oh my gosh, I blanked out on the program director's name. Oh no. But when they were formulating the program, it was going to be plant touching. And, I would say, like, how can you learn about the science of cannabis and you can't smell it? Like, we cannot smell what pinene smells like, or we can't, limonene. I mean, how can you do this? Or what the difference between a sativa and an indica leaf looks like. I mean, all these different things. But Maryland's Attorney General called her up and said, if you continue with this program, you will be considered that you are trafficking. And of course, where that's going to go. So they pulled back and reconfigured how they were going to approach and build the program. And so I had an interview scheduled with the dean, Eddington. It was July 2nd of 2019. And came out of that conversation, and we just connected. She's an African-American woman. She had worked for J&J. And she had been pulled back into academia, and but I walked out of that. I was like, I got to figure this out. Is the highest and best use of my time and money how to do this? And then it was, oh no, this means that someone's going to look at my undergraduate. But here I am, and I just finished up the first year, so we are on break for a couple of weeks, but we're go round the calendar. So it's
virtual.
You have people from the business community and the cannabis business sector coming to the school to try and meet some of the people in the class to figure out how they can benefit from hiring students.
Yeah, I mean, and that is actually a great engagement. So it's actually, and as far as the impact of COVID on the program, it's online. So once a semester we get together. Requirement is we're in DC. We have at least two internationals. So we have a student from Hong Kong, somebody from Australia. Everybody's from all over the world. So again, pretty robust backgrounds as well.
Well, we've come to that end of the hour again this week, Jackie, and I want to thank you for being on. It was very informative. It was very pleasurable talking with you tonight. And I'd like you to take a moment and tell people where they can find you on the web and who you'd like to engage with if they'd like to work with you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. So starting off the top with CannabizMD. So it's CannabizMD.com. So that's B-I-Z. And the focus again is medical cannabis. So on IG, it's cannabiz.md. We were very unfortunate victims of Facebook and IG coming through and shutting us down. We had a really robust following. So we're building back up on that. on Twitter at CannabizMD. As far as engagement there, our cooking event that we have coming up, or actually our education program. So sponsors that would like to support education in medical cannabis, I have the provider forum, which is very robust. And that again, the engagement of physicians, pharmacists, researchers, again, across the spectrum. We're having Rachel Knox, who's the commissioner of Oregon, the famous Knox Docs family. She's our keynote. We have 3 roundtables, the scientific and clinical application of medical cannabis. We go into regulatory considerations, and then we follow up with a roundtable focused on the future of cannabis. TPAD, love to have supporters and engagement there. That is TEAPAD.co. This is a phenomenal opportunity for companies to demonstrate and exercise a true commitment to social responsibility in the cannabis industry. Again, proceeds of their sponsorships go to the TPAD Scholarship for Minority Entrepreneurship, which I hope to be someday is one of these funding sources where, you need education to bust in, right?
That's
at the
awesome.
higher level. So that's what the scholarship's all about.
That's
Jackie,
awesome.
in closing out, I'd like to ask you sometime if you're going to be in Chicago when this pandemic is over, we'd like to have you as a guest at one of our events.
You got it. Can't wait.
It'd be great. And we really appreciate you being a part of this. It was great sharing all that information, seeing what it's like on the East Coast. We hope everybody out there is staying safe. We have another great panelist next week and the next week and the next week. Hopefully they're as good as Jackie. And keep in mind, Green and Shy is here for you. If you guys are looking for opportunities, you want to learn how to get jobs in this, we have resources for it. If you're starting for it, we can help you get marketing. We can get you that banking relationship. Yes, you too, Jackie. We can help you with all of that. We have
money.
We either have sources or we have referrals that are confirmed. We'd only refer people to people that we know are going to help them just like us. So again, it's another great Green and Shy episode. Thank you.
So we're going to have it be a wrap. And Jackie, thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Time out of your busy life and day to share with us your life and what you're doing. It was very interesting and very educational.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, guys, very much.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Jackie. Good night.
Good night.
Wow.
Bye-bye.